If you were tricked into entering a competition to win $16 million or spend the rest of your life in crippling debt, what would you do? I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the debt games in Liar Game. This girl is going to gamble her life away. Now here returns home to find a mysterious package outside her room with a black envelope. Curious, she opens the package to discover bundles of money stacked inside. The girl can't believe what she's seeing and reads the letter, finding out she's been entered into the Liar Game tournament and will soon be forced to play the dirtiest trick she can think of in order to win. Examining the box, the girl discovers there's exactly 100 million yen inside and decides to check what's on the VHS tape. Putting it in the VCR, it plays a video where a puppet introduces itself as the dealer and reveals that because she's watching this video, now has agreed to participate in the Liar Game with no way to back out. The dealer explains that for the first round of the tournament, the players must steal their opponent's money by any means necessary, and whoever has the most cash after 30 days will be the winner. At the end of the round, an agent will be sent to collect the money, and the winner will be allowed to keep whatever they stole, while the loser will be forced to pay back the full amount. The girl is overwhelmed and goes to the police station to make a report, but the officer tells her that since the cash has been sent to her by name, it wasn't stolen. That means the police can't help the girl, and now here has to protect it on her own. Returning home, she struggles to figure out what to do when she suddenly hears something fall through her mail slot. Entering the other room, she opens her mailbox to find an envelope labeled opponent, and inside is a letter revealing that she's competing against her old middle school teacher, but soon she'll realize he's a lot more dangerous than he appears. Later that day, Now decides to visit the man to talk about the tournament, but he tells her the game is actually a scam. He thinks the organizers will secretly steal the money given to the players and force them into debt. It makes perfect sense to her, and he suggests they keep both of their money in a safety deposit box so the organizers can't take it back. The girl's relieved he can help and hands over her bag of cash, but this was her biggest mistake. Now what's terrifying is that this is only the first of many games she'll be trapped into playing, and if she doesn't learn how to think for herself, then it's only going to get worse. Okay, this girl is a complete idiot. She should have known that handing over the money was a terrible idea, but the worst part about this is that everything her teacher said was something she could have easily done herself without his help. Now, to give her some credit, it should first go without saying that in a game like this, it's smart to not trust any information you've been given. For all we know, the teacher might actually be right, and this could be some kind of scam, because if someone is willing to give out a combined total of 1.5 million US dollars to two strangers, it's reasonable to assume that there must be a catch, and that the person most likely to benefit from this is not you. Nobody spends that kind of money without getting something for it in return, and it's extremely likely that it will be at your expense. The problem is that this is not the only way to think about this scenario, because if the game is real and the rules are true, then she's obviously going to lose by handing him the money. If it were me, I would have called his bluff and accepted his offer to help, but would then insist that we go to the bank together to make sure the money was deposited. This would then force the teacher to admit he was lying, because the man should already know if you take $1.5 million and ask to secure it in a deposit box, there's a very low chance the bank would even let you do it. Most banks put limitations on the value of the items because they're actually a lot less safe, and they don't want to be held liable if it's stolen. Even worse, storing that much money in cash makes it look like you're trying to hide it from the IRS. If it looks like we acquired this money illegally, then they're a lot more likely to deny our application, and without any paperwork to prove it's ours, this is not a viable option. Now, if this girl doesn't know who to trust, it would have been much smarter to take the teacher's advice, but keep her money locked up, ensuring that she won't lose the game, nor will she be tempted into spending the money and falling for some kind of scam. Instead of thinking this through, she decided to hinge everything on the belief that her middle school teacher was a good person. Now, as stupid as this might seem, you'd be surprised how often we make the same mistakes in our daily lives, and it's actually known as heuristic thinking. When we encounter a very complex choice with a lot of different factors, the human mind has a way of shortcutting our problem solving by generalizing it until we reach what's called a cognitive bias. And that means you're statistically more likely to draw inaccurate conclusions even though you've used a logical framework to get there. For example, this girl has known this man personally for 3 years, has had no negative experiences with him in the past, and he's offering to help. This makes it easier for her to trust him than to trust the game, and it's exactly the kind of cognitive bias that contributes to making the worst choice possible. That night, the girl arrives home and discovers that the organizers have sent another letter. This time, it warns her that she's now 100 million yen in debt and is losing the game. Worried, she calls her teacher to ask what happened with the money, and the man explains that the letter is a trick meant to make them suspicious of each other. Believing him, now decides to apologize for doubting her teacher and visits the man the next day, but as she approaches him, the girl overhears something that breaks her heart. On the phone, he brags to his friend that he tricked her into giving him money, and she was stupid enough to trust him. The next morning, she tries to report the theft to the police officer, but the man explains she can't prove her money was stolen because she gave it away willingly. Instead, he suggests she get advice from a con artist who's just finished his sentence, and with no better option, she decides to look for him. Arriving at the prison where the man is being released, the girl is suddenly knocked to the ground, and when she looks up, she sees it's the con artist. The girl begs Akiyama here for help, but the man isn't interested and quickly walks away. She chases after him, refusing to take no for an answer, so he promises to hear her out. She tells him about the liar's game, explaining that the money was stolen, and the con man quickly comes up with a plan. They visit her teacher, asking him to give all the money back, but the old man insists that it's not going to happen. The safety deposit box he used can't be accessed after 5 p.m. on weekdays, but that's when Now calls him out, revealing she heard him brag about stealing the money. The con man threatens to call the police unless he gives it back, but the teacher argues that he didn't commit a crime according to the tournament rules. With his lie exposed, the man admits that he tricked the girl, but tells them he needs the money more than she does and will do whatever it takes to win. That night, Now is ready to give up, but this time the con man has a different plan. The teacher mentioned that the safety deposit box can't be accessed after 5 p.m. on weekdays, and the girl realizes the last day of the game is on a Sunday. This means the teacher will have to withdraw the money on Friday, and that's when they'll take it from him. But Akiyama only offers to help if she pays him 50 million yen. That means he'll have to steal the teacher's money to pay for his service, and with no other option, the girl agrees. The next morning, Now visits her teacher and threatens that she's going to take all his cash before running off. It's a part of their plan to make him paranoid about what they might do and trick him into making a mistake. Over the passing days, the two of them spy on the teacher and constantly watch every move he makes. With only 7 days left, the girl is nervous that they've been wasting time, but Akiyama explains they're waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The old man will get more paranoid the longer he waits for them to make a move, and his behavior has already revealed something important. He hasn't left his house in weeks, and the only possible reason is that he's protecting the money he's hidden there. Okay, this girl has not learned her lesson. She already made the mistake of trusting her middle school teacher, but she should have realized that a con man will be even more likely to take advantage of her. This guy just got out of jail and probably doesn't have a single yen to his name. According to the game, the money technically doesn't belong to either of the players, so it would be easy for him to steal all the cash and disappear without a trace. It should go without saying that the more people you involve, the more you'll have to worry about getting betrayed, which makes asking for help a very risky strategy. Unfortunately, it's clear the girl won't be able to win this game alone, so it was the only choice she had. Now what's interesting is that this scenario is very similar to a problem in game theory called the trust game. As you can see from this diagram, there's a lot happening underneath, but on the surface, it's really simple. In 1995, economists set up an experiment to find out how much trust would influence economic decision-making and paired two strangers together. Both were given some money, and the first player is told to choose how much to give away. Whatever he decides, that sum will be tripled and given to the second player. Then, the second player is told to choose how much money he wants to return. The researchers predicted that both players would choose to act selfishly and give nothing to their opponent, but they were completely wrong. What they found was that 94% of the first players would give away over half of their money, tripling the amount for the second player, so there was more for them to give back. That means if they both started with $10, then by playing cooperatively, they could end the game with $15 each, or play selfishly and end up with less. Now, the difference here is that in this game, there can only be one winner, but that doesn't mean there have to be any losers. If the girl and the teacher had discussed whether or not it was worth it to risk spending the rest of their life in crippling debt, they both might have come to the conclusion that they have more to gain if they cooperate and trust each other to return their own cash after 30 days. Neither of them would win, but it's the only outcome where they both don't lose. Now, the teacher made a huge mistake taking all of the money because he left his opponent with no other strategy than to steal, and it trapped him into only being able to protect the money without any other strategic options. In game theory, this is known as the Nash equilibrium, where knowing what the other player player will do doesn't change the strategy or the outcome. You might recognize this name from the movie A Beautiful Mind, which is about the man who the theory is named after. Now, if I were the teacher, I would have realized it's a lot smarter to have stolen half of her money and then threatened to steal the other half. It might sound counterintuitive, but this would actually force the girl to choose whether or not to protect what she already has or risk it being stolen to try getting the rest of it back. This is the best decision the teacher could make, because if he leaves her with this choice, she won't be spending all of her time trying to steal from him, making his money safer from being stolen. The next morning, the teacher wakes up to find smoke filling the room. Panicking, he's about to run outside, but stays behind to let the smoke out instead. He pulls out his phone to call the fire department when he suddenly hears a noise behind him and turns around to see his opponent standing outside. Akiyama reveals they tricked him into thinking there was a fire so they could figure out where the money was hidden, and the teacher admits that it's in the house, but they'll never be able to take it. All the cash has been locked inside a heavy-duty safe, but the conman makes it clear that this won't stop them from winning the game. They leave the house as the man panics that he's going to lose all of the money, but Akiyama has one last trick up his sleeve. The next night, the teacher checks his mail and discovers a letter from the game designers. It warns him that tomorrow at 5 p.m., an agent will be sent to collect the money and announce the end of the first game. The next morning, the teacher keeps watch over his house and protects the safe until there's only 10 minutes left before the round ends. Desperate, Now here begs the conman to do something or else they'll lose, but he stays quiet. It seems he's given up, and the girl leaves the room disappointed that she ever trusted him. Arriving at the teacher's house, she begs him to give back her money, but he refuses and pushes her to the ground. There's nothing she can do as the clock hits 5 p.m. and the man realizes he's won. The agent has already arrived at the house, and the teacher invites him inside to show him the cash. Unlocking the safe, the man lets him count the 200 million yen and celebrates his victory, but this was his biggest mistake. 1 hour later, the agent is almost done checking the cash when they hear the doorbell suddenly ring. Confused, the teacher walks to the front door, finding more agents have come to collect the money, and that's when the other man walks past them to leave. He realizes something's wrong and runs back to his living room to find the con man waiting for him. Akiyama reveals that the first agent was an imposter he hired, and he replaced his letter with a fake one. The real agents were supposed to come here at 6 p.m., and that means the teacher has just lost the game. With the round officially over, now here is deemed the winner and gets to keep 100 million yen as a reward. The girl heads back home with her new friend, but she realizes that her teacher won't be able to pay back his own debt and will ruin him for life. Feeling guilty, she returns to his house and offers him half of the money she won so he can pay back some of his debt, but that was her biggest mistake. Okay, this girl is way too nice. Her own middle school teacher was moments away from putting her in crippling debt, and now she's giving him half of her winnings. She also has to pay the con man the other half for his help, and it leaves her with nothing left. Now, luckily, they managed to win the game, but the problem with their strategy is that if one thing went wrong, their opponent would have easily won. If anything raised his suspicions, they would only have 1 hour to come up with a new plan, and that's not something I'd be willing to risk. We need as much time on our side as possible, and that's why I would have tried to steal his money a lot sooner. One of the most important details is that the rules explicitly state any action taken to steal the money won't be treated as a crime. Now this is a very strange rule, because if it's true, it implies that law enforcement is not only aware of the game, but also controlled by the Liar Game Agency. Earlier, the girl went to this policeman after her money was stolen, but she didn't stop to realize how strange it was that the local law enforcement was recommending she find a criminal to help her. There's no way that would happen unless he was already working for the game, and if this is true, then we have a lot more options that should be explored, because it means we could break into his house, tie him down, or even kill him without getting in trouble for it. Now, there's no reason to take it that far, but understanding our options is essential for making sure we have a plan that gives us the best chance of success, and waiting until 1 hour before the game ends is not the best strategy here. If it were me, I would wait until he's asleep, break into his house with a weapon, and lie that we will kill him if he doesn't open the safe. This forces him to choose between his life or the money, and that's something he won't want to risk trying to call our bluff. The game has given us the freedom to use brute force as a solution with no consequences, and not trying this first would be a terrible waste of an opportunity. That night, Now here is walking home when she sees Akiyama waiting for her, and he hands over his half of the winnings. He's had a change of heart, and the girl leaves to take the briefcase to the teacher, relieved that the man will be able to pay back his debt in full. Later, she takes Akiyama back to her place, but as the girl checks her mail, she discovers something horrifying. It's another letter from from the organizers announcing that she's qualified for the second round of the liar game, but there's a catch. They sit down to watch the video that was sent, and the dealer tells her that she has two choices. Now can either keep playing or pay back half her winnings and drop out of the tournament, but if she doesn't choose in time, the agency will force her to return the entire 100 million yen by any means necessary. She's already given away all her money, and they both realize they have no choice but to continue playing. The next morning, the girl goes to the mansion where the next game will be held, and the agent instructs her to wear this nameplate before opening the doors, revealing a room full of other contestants. Suddenly, a TV screen turns on, and the dealer welcomes them to the second round, but that's when the con man walks in, announcing he's joined the tournament. The girl is shocked, and the man explains he came to stop her from playing, but now he's stuck here just like the rest of them. He's about to tell her what happened, but suddenly the doors close, and the dealer begins to explain the rules. Everyone has tiny gems attached to their nameplates that are each worth 100 million yen and must compete for the grand prize of 2.1 billion yen. In this game, one player will be chosen to ask a yes or no question, and the others will have 6 hours to vote on an answer. Everyone who chose the answer with the least amount of votes will be allowed to stay, while the losers must drop out of the tournament and go 100 million yen in debt. This will continue until there are no more than 2 players remaining, and if the winners refuse to play in the next round, half of their money will be taken. With the rules explained, the dealer tells the players that they will host a practice round before the real challenge starts tomorrow. Almost everyone is nervous about their chances, and now approaches the con man curious to know how he became a player. Akiyama explains that he came to stop her from joining the second round, but when he arrived, he met a player who was robbed by another participant. The agent offered him a chance to take the woman's place, but now he's gambling with his life just like the others. Later, the players all gather in the rehearsal room, and one of them is chosen to create a question. Walking up to the front, she asks the players, "Are you a woman?" and they're given these cards with either yes or no on them. They must use these to vote, but the dealer warns if both cards are put into the box or they fail to vote on time, they'll be disqualified. For the practice round, they'll be given 10 minutes and the timer begins counting down. Looking around, now realizes that there are more male players than female, so she should be in the minority. But with time running out, everyone places their votes in the ballot box. Okay, this game is a lot more intense. Instead of trying to predict the actions of one player, we now have 21 other people we have to take into consideration, and every single one of them is willing to screw us over to win the game. This is not going to be easy to find a good strategy for, but luckily this scenario is actually a real problem that's studied in game theory, and it's known as the El Faro bar problem. The idea is that every night there are 100 people who want to visit the El Faro bar, but it can only hold 60. If any more than that shows up, it will be too crowded, but everyone must decide at the same time whether to go or not with no knowledge of the other people's choices. This is very similar to the situation these players are facing because they all want to be in the minority, but the good news is that we can talk to our opponents to collect data, and it might help us to manipulate them to vote one way instead of another. Now surprisingly, there's actually a mathematical solution to the El Faro bar problem, but it only works with more data from previous experiments. And since this is just the first test round, we need to figure out how people will vote without this equation for the time being. We already know there are more men than there are women, and that means if everyone votes according to their gender, the women will automatically win as the minority. As soon as the men figure this out, it's guaranteed that some of them will vote the other way, and all it takes is 3 men to lie for the minority to switch. There might be some women who figure this out as well and change their votes, but it's more likely that there will be a lot more from the current majority to switch votes than the other way around. With all that in mind, the obvious solution for now here is to vote no and see what happens, and even though we can't use a strategy for every round, it's going to give us the best chance at passing this test. The results are counted, revealing that 15 people voted yes and only 7 answered no. Shocked, the girl doesn't understand how that's possible since there are only 9 women, but the dealer explains that the truth doesn't matter. In this game, the goal is to be part of the group with the least votes, and they need to trick the others to vote for the majority. Afterwards, an agent tells the players they'll be disqualified if they leave, and with no better option, they all decide to stay. Upstairs, Akiyama here comes up with a clever plan, explaining to the girl that they'll need to form an 8-man team. If they all join forces to split their votes evenly between yes and no, then they can ensure at least one of the members will win the grand prize. Then, the winner can drop out of the tournament, paying the quitter's fee, and whatever is left will be shared with the others. That way they'll each get at least 40 million yen, but there's a problem. The player that Akiyama replaced had all of her money stolen, and that thief is someone in this tournament, but the only thing they know is that it's a woman. If she joined the team, she could easily betray them, but that's when Now has an idea. The girl realizes if they don't have any other women in the group, the thief can't take advantage of their strategy and leaves the room to look for allies. She comes back with 6 other men, and with the group assembled, Akiyama has them sign a contract promising that the winner will split the money. But one of the men asks who the mysterious thief might be. Now admits that they think it's the woman in the sunglasses, and the nerd agrees. He figures that since she must have stolen the check, the woman isn't scared of losing and going into debt. It makes perfect sense, and the group is confident they'll win, with no idea that there's already a traitor among them. The next morning, the players gather for the first round of the game, and the geek is instructed to come to the stage. Standing at the front, he asks if beaches are better than mountains. The team members spend the next 6 hours gathering information on their opponents, and they all cast their votes in the final seconds of the game. The results are counted, and the first round ends with 10 yeses versus 12 nos. Everything is going to plan so far, but the woman with the sunglasses survived the round, and it only makes her more suspicious. Okay, this was brutal. 12 players just got kicked out of the game, but the good news is that so far, Akiyama's strategy seems to be working. He split his team in 2, with 4 of them voting yes and 4 of them voting no. This guarantees that at least one member of the group will stay until the last round and is contractually obligated to share the reward money. The biggest problem here is that cooperation also makes you more vulnerable for others to take advantage, but Akiyama didn't realize that there was an even better way to guarantee winning the game. We have to encourage cooperation as much as possible, and that's why if it were me, instead of gathering the men, I would do the exact opposite and gather the women to form our team. Based on what we currently know, we can assume that the thief is likely to be in the group, and that's exactly what we want. Including the thief will help us identify her more quickly, and ancient wisdom tells us to keep your friends close and your enemies closer. This will allow you to monitor their activity and plan against it. Anything that limits your opponent's options is often the best strategy, and when there's already a good incentive to cooperate, it's very possible that they will agree to the terms instead of working against us. With 10 players still remaining, the con man realizes his idea might go wrong, but insists they stick with the strategy. That's when this guy is chosen to present the next question and walks to the stage, asking the group whether or not they're all sadists. Feeling something's wrong, the con man tells Now to vote no in this round, while he votes yes, and the girl's confused but follows his advice. Overhearing them, the nerd confronts him, wanting to know why Akiyama suddenly switched votes, and he tells the man not to worry about it. With that cleared up, the players make their choices, and when the ballots are counted, the results show that 6 people have voted no. Now here has just lost the round and leaves the tournament, hopeful that her team will win, but when she looks back, the girl sees something shocking. The woman with the sunglasses is still in the game, and if she's the thief, she might ruin Akiyama's plan. The next morning, the remaining 4 players begin the third round of the game, and the nerd is called to present a question. Standing in front of the group, he asks them if he will win, and the timer starts counting down. Afterwards, he approaches Akiyama and double checks with him so he knows how they're supposed to vote. If all goes according to plan, this round will finally end, but soon everyone will know who the thief is. Later, the participants are casting their vote, and the nerd notices the con man is folding his card into a small square. Curious, he asks him why, and the guy tells him this will guarantee it's picked last. He puts his voting card into the ballot box, and the agent begins to announce the results, revealing that at least 2 people have both chosen to answer no. That means only one team member needs to choose yes for them to win, and suddenly Now here bursts into the room. She came back to check how the game went along with the other losers, and they're told to watch from the sidelines. Noticing how happy she is, this woman asks why the girl's so excited, and the nerd interrupts, revealing they formed a team together, but then he calls her an idiot. He was only pretending to work with them and was actually the thief the whole time, showing everyone the check he stole from another player. To make matters worse, his signature on the contract was faked, meaning he doesn't have to share any of the prize money with them. The girl doesn't understand why he's so confident he'd win, but the nerd decides to explain his master plan. He copied Akiyama's strategy and formed 2 other teams of his own, ensuring that he would always be in the minority because he was a member of all 3 teams, but only casting 1 vote, which tipped the scales. By knowing exactly what the others would choose and being the tiebreaker, he could pass each vote safely without anyone else knowing. Okay, this guy is a genius. After joining Akiyama's team, he realized that there were exactly enough players to make the strategy work for his own self-interest, and managed to trick everyone else that he was on their side too. But there's one possible strategy that could have completely undermined his ability to pull this off. Earlier, all the players were given these nameplates which represent the money they're each gambling with. The agent even warned the girl she needs to keep it with her at all times, and that means if it goes missing, she might not be able to gamble or continue playing. Now, they've already spent a single night here, and it's reasonable to assume the nameplates will likely be taken off before they go to sleep. This creates a very interesting opportunity, because if someone forgets to lock their door at night, we could easily walk inside their rooms and steal 100 million yen without anyone knowing. If this strategy was recognized by any of these players, and somebody cast a vote without their nameplate the next morning, that person's vote might be disqualified, and something like this could easily tip the scales from a majority to a minority. We don't know if this strategy is against the rules, but there's good reason to think it should be possible. It's already been established in the previous game that taking someone's money was not only allowed, but encouraged, and they even let the thief participate in the second round after he stole the woman's check. So it's reasonable to assume that it's fair for us to keep stealing during the game. Now, if we were paying attention, there were plenty of signs that told us this guy was a lot more suspicious than he looks. During their first meeting, Now here admitted that there was a thief in the game, but the nerd immediately pointed out why the girl in the sunglasses was the most suspicious player and suggested they should all look for reasons to prove she's the thief. He also kept asking Akiyama who he's voting for, even though his instructions were already given. This is suspicious behavior, and the more nosy someone is, the more likely they want to use that information for their own agenda. If I were Akiyama, I would have started considering him a risk based on his behavior and try to take precautions in case something unexpected happened. When we look at the situation from this perspective, there were plenty of signs that would have given us enough reason to single the nerd out and decide to steal his nameplate as insurance in case he betrays us. If our suspicions were wrong, then we could simply return the nameplate during his vote and continue the game. Suddenly, the agent announces that the nerd has voted yes, and he's moments away from winning the game. But to everyone's surprise, that's when it's revealed that Akiyama voted yes as well. That means the votes are tied, and there will have to be another round, but the nerd is furious, demanding to know how his plan went wrong. Amused, the con man explains he figured someone else must have copied his idea after almost everyone lost in the first vote, but nobody looked upset. The only reason they'd be calm was if they had a strategy that guaranteed they would win, but Akiyama was smart enough to realize the nerd was the thief a long time ago. The first question was why the mystery thief was disguised themselves, but the con man realized that it would only make sense if they were playing as a proxy for someone else. The nerd has a gender-neutral name on his nameplate, and it helped him hide that he was playing in place of a female friend. He dressed up as a woman to participate in the liar's game, but used his disguise to take advantage of the other player and steal her cash before the game began. Once he was inside, he took off his disguise and nobody would suspect it was him because they thought the culprit was female. He then tried to convince them the woman in the sunglasses was the thief, but Akiyama explains he made one huge mistake. Earlier, he mentioned that the woman must have stolen a check instead of cash, but nobody else knew that information and it gave away that this nerd was the thief. Furious, the man argues that he still has one more round to win the game and they continue playing, but this time, the agent chooses Akiyama to ask the final question. Stepping up to the platform, he asks whether or not the most important thing in life is money, and suddenly shows his card to the entire room before dropping it into the box. The others can't believe what he's doing, but the con man explains that with only 3 players left to vote, it will be impossible for the last player to join the minority, and he's guaranteed to win. They now have 6 hours to vote, and this man tries to figure out what the others will do when he suddenly has a clever idea. Approaching the nerd, he suggests they form a new team splitting their votes between the 2 choices so neither of them will lose. It's a decent strategy, but the nerd points out that everyone else has overheard his plan and now they'll end up locked in a tie. That's when the woman approaches them and drops a truth bomb, revealing that all they have to do to beat the con man is to form a larger team of 3. The men find it hard to believe and point out there won't be enough money to pay off the debts of the other team members, but the woman plans on moving on to the next round. That means half of their earnings won't be taken by the agents and demands a larger cut of the reward money, leaving a little over 1 million yen for the nerd as punishment for his betrayal. Okay, this was a risky strategy, but there's still a good chance that it will pay off if we're careful. Akiyama used his time wisely by casting his vote first for everyone to see, and this move instantly gave him the upper hand. The next player is forced to vote yes, since the only other choice is to join the majority, which would make him instantly lose. This strategy could have actually been used earlier in the game as well, but it would have been much less effective. The reason is because when there are more people, it's harder to visualize the final result, but in a group of 4, the players are able to see how each vote will affect the final outcome. What's most interesting is that nobody rushed in to be the second player to vote. We want to make sure that our vote isn't trapped in the majority, and whoever votes second will be safer, but whoever votes third is more likely to lose because he becomes the majority no matter what side he chooses. The 4th player has a chance to tie the game, but if nobody else shows their votes before casting it, they might choose the wrong side and force the majority by accident. As the second voter, this gives you a 33% chance to win, and that's a lot better than 0. Forming a new team also has less benefit now because if they they win, they're contractually bound to share all the earnings, and since there will be 2 full teams to split it with instead of 1, they'll only get half as much as before. This woman completely changed the dynamics here because she decided she would play in the 3rd round, which doubles the prize money, and this makes team building a worthwhile strategy again. Now, in a situation where people are acting selfishly, the smart approach is forcing them to think that the only way to benefit is to cooperate. There was a great example of this on a show called Golden Balls, which used the game theory problem of the prisoner's dilemma as the premise. 2 players must decide to either steal all of the prize money or split it between them, but if they both decide to steal, they each get nothing. Now, what's so fascinating is that this man here single-handedly broke the entire game. His strategy was to tell his opponent that he was going to steal, but promised to share the money after the show. It sounds crazy, because if he really wanted to share it, then he could have chosen split, but the genius here is that it gave the other player no option to steal it for himself. With no better choice, he decided to split, and later found out his opponent also picked split. The producers recognized that this strategy would break the game, and canceled the show that same season. This is a great example of why sometimes the best strategy is to convince your opponent that his only choice is to cooperate, and if they believe you, then you might both get what you want in the end. Desperate to remain in the game, the man begs them to turn this vote into a draw, and the woman agrees, but insists she'll put everyone's ballots into the box for them. It's the easiest way to ensure no one can cheat, and she puts all their cards in, but this was their biggest mistake. The nerd confronts Akiyama, confident that he's going to lose, but that's when he stands up and reveals they've just been tricked. The agent begins to announce the final results, but suddenly she tells them that the woman voted yes, turning them into the majority. The men don't understand what happened, and Akiyama explains that he's working with the woman. She reveals that she never wanted to move on to the next game and secretly made plans with the con man so they could wipe out the remaining opponents by baiting the nerd into asking for a draw. The only thing Akiyama had to do to convince the woman was let her hold on to his nameplate as insurance, and that means the nerd has lost. Suddenly, the dealer announces the 2nd round is over and the winner can claim his prize. Taking him to another room, the agent gives Akiyama the reward of 2.1 billion yen and tells him that he can either continue playing the game or give back half his money to quit. After making his decision, he heads back home with Nao, and she asks how much money he gave to the woman with the sunglasses. He reveals that she received 1.2 billion yen, and the rest of his prize money will be used to pay off everyone's debts. The girl doesn't understand how he has that much cash, but the man reveals that he's going to enter the 3rd round, continuing the game until he can finally confront the masterminds. The next morning, the girl tries to call Akiyama, worried that he's taking on too much to handle, but he refuses to answer. Suddenly, she hears a knock on her door, and when she opens it, finds the fake cop waiting for her on the other side. She immediately shuts it, yelling at him to leave her alone, but he reveals that there's a way she can help the con man. Feeling guilty, the girl lets him inside, and he tells her that 3 days from now, there will be a private game for the losers of the 2nd round. If she wins, Nao has a chance to win enough money to pay for Akiyama's quitting fee, but the girl is terrified. She won't have any help this time, and the man makes it clear that this is the only opportunity the HC will give to save her friend. 3 days later, she goes to the location of this revival round where the agent welcomes her back to the tournament. Walking inside the arcade, the girl reunites with several losers from the last game, but that's when she realizes that the thief Fukunaga is also here, and he's bitter about losing. Suddenly, the TV screen turns on, and the dealer welcomes them to their next challenge. Their goal is to steal 100 million yen, and those who win will be forced to play in the next round, but this makes them all furious. They came here hoping to pay off their debts, and the dealer makes it clear that the winners will not only be able to pay off what they owe, but also win a huge sum of cash. None of them can afford to turn down the offer, and the players decide to stay, knowing this is their only real option. With that, the doors are locked from the inside, and the dealer explains that first they must choose one person to kick out of the tournament so that the winner of this revival round can take their place. Now here is terrified of what's about to happen, and soon she'll have to go through 4 more rounds to finally escape the Liar Game tournament.
But what do you think? How would you beat Liar's Game? Let me know with a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching, leave a like and subscribe, and check out the How to Beat playlist for more videos like this. Until next time, have a damn good day.